Welcome everyone once more all the way from Mombasa. This is Coach Collins Bolo coming all the way from Mombasa with our every Friday evening primetime program, Rebuilding Family Foundation. Kindly, if you can get me from any part of this world, you might be just inbox me, just text a word, tell me I can hear you, I can get you. I'm listening right from where your location is, so that as we continue today, we may see some other more tips to life which we are going to learn. Kindly, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebuilding Family Foundation, or Christ Temple Community Church, or you can get to my Facebook page, Collins Bolo. Kindly invite your friends, send this link to as many people as possible, even as we listen to Jonathan Nelson with his song, I Believe.
Come on, everybody, get your feet happy. Let's go, come on. Where my islanders? Can some of y'all run down here to the front real quick? I gotta know who's in the building. Where my islanders? I need y'all to run down here. Come on, let me see ya.
I
pain, y'all. Goodbye, y'all. Everybody raise it up. You are the God of miracles, say it. You are the God of miracles. You are the God of wonders. You are the God of wonders. You are the God of powerful. You are the God of power. I believe, say it. I believe. I believe. I believe. Say it, say I believe. I believe. I believe, say it. I believe. Say it, y'all. I believe. I believe. So long. Hey, so long. Yeah, so long. Goodbye to my trouble. Goodbye to my pain, y'all. Somebody wave me bye-bye. Somebody wave me bye-bye. You ain't welcome here. You ain't welcome here. Goodbye to my trouble. Goodbye to my pain, y'all. I can't hear you up there. Somebody raise it up, say. Somebody raise it up, say. You are the God of miracles, say. You are the God of miracles. Ah, you are the God of wonders. You are the God of wonders. Thank you. We cast our cares upon you, for you care for us. That's what we can say. I believe. I believe. I believe. Say it. I believe. I believe. I believe. I believe. I believe.
Yes, welcome. I believe God is great, God is wonderful, and is merciful. This is once more Rebuilding Family Foundation. Thank you, Eso Ndege, saying it's glued right to follow us and to continue learning together with us. Also, like to appreciate Brian Bolo, who is watching all the way from his place of comfort. This is another great day. We are going to learn great things, great inspiration with content which can bring a change in your life in one way or the other. Have you ever found yourself in a scenario, in a situation where you feel there's something wrong somewhere, but you cannot just pick it? You can feel that there's something wrong with you, or there's something happening within your system which is not well, but you cannot actually define it. This kind of feelings, most of the time, we experience as human beings. And there are times we might be lucky to be able to pick what's bothering us, but there are times whereby we might be unfortunate and not be able to pick what exactly is bothering us. Now, why am I saying this? No, just as sometimes it becomes a challenge to pick some of the things which might be bothering us, among all different kind of emotions which we experience in our day-to-day life, there's one part of emotion which most of the time is neglected, not addressed, but it can be extremely dangerous if we don't know how to manage that part of our emotion. And this emotion, we call it grief. Grief. We call it grief. Now, why is it important for you today to understand this part of emotion so that you can be able to address it? Now, that one means it becomes extremely important to get content and information about it. And then you get to understand how the global, financially, globally, emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually, lack of understanding it has brought a lot of predicament in our life in one way or the other. Now, that one brings me to this subject matter so that we can be able to learn today. And not only today, we are going to have more days, and we're going to have a day whereby we are going to exhaust the depth. Today, I like just to create an awareness so that the day you'll hear you having training about it, you're just going to glue yourself and enjoy the training. Now, when we talk about grief, what is grief and why is it important for us to understand. Now, grief is the normal and natural reaction to significant emotional loss of any kind. Now, grief is the normal and natural reaction to significant emotional loss of any kind. We have different type of losses, different kind of losses which we undergo in life, which I'll be talking about them based on research which was done for more than 15 years. But this feeling called grief, it's normal. Apart from that, it's very natural, but it is based on a reaction to significant emotional loss of any kind, meaning that once we get a significant emotional loss of any kind, then this kind of feeling comes, which is very natural and even very much normal. So meaning that having the feeling of grief, it's not an abnormal feeling, but normal and natural feeling when a significant emotional loss of any kind takes place on a person. And let me tell you something, as you're going to discover today, every day there are different type of losses we incur. And this natural and normal feeling we experience. But there's some extent once it gets to, it now turns from just being normal and it becomes destructive. And that's why you need to get this awareness today. Again, we say grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. I repeat again, grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. Now, day-to-day life, you have different familiar pattern of behavior as we wake up, as we get to work, as we get to interact with different people at different time. But once there's a sudden end of familiar pattern of behavior, there's a feeling which comes to us most of the time, and sometimes it can be a very conflicting feeling. For example, someone you love very much, then leaves to another country, another city, to another job, or this person dies. When there's that sudden end of that familiar pattern of behavior of you meeting with this person, interacting with this person, all these gadgets. You have your phone, you are in a matatu, calling someone, then someone snatched it away from you. The moment it's gone and you have realized it's gone and you cannot get it back, there's this feeling which comes because that's the end of the use of your phone in the hands of a thief, and the common pattern of you chatting and calling has been shattered at that time. That feeling, I call it grief. Again, I can define it this way. Grief is the feeling of reaching out for someone who has always been there for you, only to find when you need them, again, they are no longer there. It's a feeling of trying to reach out to someone who has always been there. Maybe your dad, your mom, your daughter, your son. Every day you interact, your big brother, your big sister, your co-worker, your colleague who has always been there for you. Have been meeting, talking, chatting, quarreling. But a time comes whereby when you want to reach out to this particular individual, you suddenly find out that you can no longer reach out to that person. That feeling which comes at that particular point is grief. But remember one thing, grief is normal and grief is natural. It's not a pathological condition or a personality disorder. I repeat, it's not a pathological condition or a personality disorder. And this is very key because I've found out that there are many people, once they get to grief because of loss of a loved one, and they start experiencing the feeling of grief, they are being put under a lot of medication in ignorance. Remember, it is normal and natural at the same time. Now, if this information I'm passing up to this point from definition sounds very good and interesting, kindly just send a notification to me. Just send a comment, tell me I'm getting you, I'm understanding you. If you can get me very well from my definition, just communicate back. Let me feel you. Let me feel you. Just type from where you are. I can hear you. I can understand you. I'll be very happy if I can get a text from you. Thank you, PMB Bolo, watching from Kwale. I really appreciate so much for your support, even getting to this particular program at this time. Very key, very, very important. Let me let's hear from you. Okay, so we move on. Now, when losses take place in our life and the feeling of grief starts coming in, people start having different kind of experiences. For example, someone has died, you have just lost your job, you have lost your status, you have lost your money, you have lost your investment. Like now, there are so many people in their urge and desire even to grow economically. They've invested a lot in cryptocurrency. Then suddenly the company disappears. You cannot reach out to them. You realize you have just been conned and your money is gone. When such kind of losses take place, most of the time, typical responses associated with the grief include the following: reduced concentration. Some people, it just hits them and they can no longer concentrate to do anything for themselves. There's a company which was called Daisy some years back in Kenya. It went down with millions of money for Kenyans. Some people, not only they reduce concentration in what they do, some became mentally sick. Some people get to a point of sense of numbness. Their feeling about everything and most of the things about life get shattered. And this one becomes extremely a challenge for them. So a sense of numbness and don't care comes to them. They become angry because of the loss they have incurred. Some get disrupted sleeping patterns. They can no longer sleep anymore. They have lost their daughter, they have lost their son, they have just lost their husband, they have just lost their job, and there's no way they can sleep well. Such kind of symptoms start manifesting. Some they change their eating habits. Probably they've been eating 3 times in a day, now they eat once in a day. Some start eating even up to 6 times in a day because of grief, which they're not aware about it. And out of that, it's really consuming them. We have some few other more who get roller coaster of emotional energy, up and down coming in, up and down coming in at this particular point. But at this phase, most of the time, you realize that most of the people are not aware. It is part of the effect of grief because of the loss which they got. This is very key and very important. Thank you, Esondege. He's saying, I'm getting it from another perspective. I didn't know. I am learning. Thank you for your feedback. This is the power of knowledge and information. Thank you, Eso, even as we are learning more and more. So different kind of experiences come to different group of people when losses take place and they get into grief. But how many number of losses are considered as grief? Because not every loss is necessarily leading to a grief. A research was done for 15 years. And within those 15 years of research, it was found that there are over 48 losses that are considered grief or can lead to grief. There are over 42 losses which once you incur, then it can lead to grief. Some of these 42 losses include loss through death. So most of the time when death takes place, people get to grief or sadness. And we need to know how we can handle such kind of feeling when it hits us. Some get, when divorce takes place, loss of relationship through divorce can lead to grief. Retirement can lead to grief. Why? Because when you retire, there's a sudden change of pattern of behavior with meeting with the people you are so much used to them. It can lead to grief. Even sometime, not only retirement, which someone has maybe worked in an institution for more than 30 years, for more than 40 years. Some have worked in a place for more than 20 years, more than 15 years. the moment is a time for relocating from that place because of retirement, it leads to a lot of grief. In fact, there are some people who have been noted after retirement, they still find themselves waking up very early in the morning, dressing and leaving their home, going to work. They cannot withstand the feeling of not getting back to office. Moving to a new location leads to grief. You have been living in this estate, you have lived there for 10 years, for 5 years, for 15 years. The social network you have built in that particular community is very strong, and the bond between you and the people is very strong. It has been found that when people move from such kind of community to another new community, majority have ended up in a state of grief. But the challenge is, when people are in grief, are they aware the root and the trigger factor to grief at this particular point and time? Sometimes people might move from one location to another, not out of will. For example, your estate has been bought by another investor, and then you are suddenly being kicked out of that particular location. It brings a lot of conflict of emotions at this particular point. Moving from one location to another can lead to grief. Pet loss. In the past, we used to assume that it's only the people in the Western world, when they lose their pets, they can have the feeling of grief. But interestingly, even many of us experience it today. When you lose your cat, when you lose your dog, when you lose any of your pet, that feeling of loss, which comes due to loss, grief, we can experience it. Sometimes it can be loss of health. You have just been sick, on and off, on and off, on and off. Then suddenly you get to the hospital and the doctors tell you, it's unfortunate that you have just discovered you have cancer and it is at stage 4. There's nothing we can do except starting palliative care. When you hear such kind of a message, you don't start saying, hallelujah, praise the Lord. There's that feeling of grief, which will suddenly come on top of you and feel you at that time. So loss of health has led many people to a state of grief, and they're not aware it is grief and it is consuming them. Legal problems can lead to grief. Probably you have not cleared your rent where you are living, maybe your office, and the guys are taking you to court, in and out, land-related issues. Actually, there are so many people today, due to legal issues, grief has totally consumed them very, very much, to the point whereby even they're losing their physical health. The emptiness syndrome. You got married very young, suddenly you started having children, your children have grown, they have gone to the university, and now they're working in different places, and you're back again alone as you started. Not many couples have ability to withstand such kind of experience. It can lead to grief. Alcohol addiction can lead to grief, especially if you are requested now to end the use of alcohol so that you can be free from using it. Not every person who stops taking alcohol because of addiction feels excited. The feeling of grief can also take place. These are just some few out of many things which can lead to grief. Is this information good? Do you find it to be very interesting? Do you find it to be very inspiring? If it is so, kindly go back to the YouTube page where you are, to the Facebook page where you are. Just write a comment about the information coming in. I'm inspired. I'm learning more. I'm getting a new perspective. Can you just write something so that I can know I'm not alone? At least somebody is getting me somewhere. Someone is understanding me. Someone is together with me.
Moyo wangu ukae kimya. Amen. Unaye Mungu mkuu sana, unaye Mungu muweza wa yote. Aliingia rohoni mwangu, kanipa kutulia, kaniambia ewe mwanangu, usilie niete. Aliingia rohoni mwangu, kanipa kutulia, kaniambia ewe mwanangu, usilie niye tena. Ninajua shida zako, mimi nitazitatua. Bila Yesu mimi ni mtu bure. Bila Yesu mimi ni mtu bure.
Katikisa Yesu mwanga wangu, kati huzuni Yesu ni mfariji, kati vita Yesu mwamba wangu,
Welcome back. This is Rebuilding Family Foundation, coming all the way from Mombasa for a place and a studio and time for adding knowledge and wisdom to ourselves, and not only that, understanding, so that we can make our lives better and transform as many people as possible. Today we are right here so that we can get to understand more and more and more about issues which affect our lives and how we can be able to address them in one way or the other. Why is this important and why is it key? It's because our success in life is determined by the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding we get and gain each and every day. Please, if you can hear me once more, just send your comments, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebuilding Family Foundation. Rebuilding Family Foundation, just subscribe to that channel. Not only that, if you want more information and depth about grief and loss, we have fully recorded episode 1 and 2. In that channel, you can watch and you can gain more information for yourself. Yes, one thing up to this point, for those who are just joining us right now, life has losses. And every day we encounter losses. You don't need to pray for them. You don't need just you cannot avoid them, but they'll always come. Death, divorce, retirement, moving from one location to another, pet loss, financial changes, either increasing or decreasing, losses of health through health, legal problems, emptiness condition, trying to come out of addiction, among many other, are different type of losses which a person can incur. And when these losses take place, a feeling of grief will suddenly come. When it comes, what next should you do? Another thing you need to understand is that we have intangible examples of grief. Some things which can still lead to grief, but you cannot touch them. They're intangible. For example, loss of trust. There's this friend of yours, a business partner, probably your husband, your wife, just found something which you have been hiding and trust has been broken. When that time when loss of trust takes place, there's a feeling which comes in, that feeling of grief. Loss of trust can come because you have been hiding things from your parents, from your boss, from your neighbors, and suddenly it has been found out. You just mismanaged some resources and it has just been found out. It can lead to a loss of trust, which can lead to grief. It's intangible, but the feeling of grief is real. We are talking about loss of safety. Suddenly, probably where you are coming from, your community, in your neighborhood, suddenly people have suddenly been mugged. Probably some have been killed, shooting taking place. For example, if today you are living in Pokot and you're a teacher, and suddenly because of banditry taking place in that location, that loss of safety can lead to a feeling of grief. Can you remember during the time of COVID, every information you are getting from the television, from the radio, was about COVID. It is right next to you. Wash your hands every time. Keep distance. The feeling of grief was so much on us because who would you trust? Where will you trust? So loss of safety can lead to the feeling of grief. We have loss of control. When it gets to a point whereby probably you are sick, maybe in your home you are the husband, and things have just changed and you can no longer be in control of your family and your marriage. Or your wife and someone has just come in between you and your husband and you are no longer in control of the happenings at home. Loss of faith. You have been praying and trusting God for something to happen, but time has just elapsed and you have not got the job. Your friend has died, or your relative, or your investment didn't work. You can lose faith. Loss of faith can lead to grief. Loss of productivity can lead to grief. When you are putting all the knowledge, all the skill, you have the right mindset, you have all the right tool set, you have all the right skill set, you are doing what you can do, but instead of things becoming better, they're getting worse and worse. When these things happen, we can get to a state of grief. But do people have the same experience as grief? When same experience as when grief takes place? Now, one thing you need to understand is that you can be in the same family, you lose your dad, but all of you, because you are individuals and you're unique, your experience of grief will be different one from the other. That's why you say grief is individual and it's unique. Apart from that, there's no stage in grief. Now, this is important because even in the classes whereby I've been lecturing on psychology, our former curriculum, we have been teaching people about stages of grief. But the truth of the matter is that grief cannot be neatly categorized in stages, because people who teach about stages in grief, they're getting the idea from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, whose work and research was on death and the dying, not grief. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with stages before someone dies. Now, some scholars have taken the stages towards death and they have also put it to be the same stages when someone is undergoing grief. That is wrong. It's not accurate. Why? She was very specific on this distinct research. And in her book, he was doing research on death and the dying. Unfortunately, today, so many books have been published. In the media, people have been taught about stages of death. In our universities and college, we are teaching people about stages of death, but all that is wrong and inaccurate because it's not in the context of the author of the book and the researcher. Now, this common misinformation has confused and hurt many grievers throughout the years. Why? Because when the grievers get to the therapist, they start analyzing them by stages. Probably you're in stage 2. It seems you're in stage 1. It seems you're in stage 4 of your grief. There's nothing like stages in grief. The idea about stages in grief was based on the dying, death, and the dying. So therefore, sadly, if you misdiagnose, you'll also mistreat. Now, because many grievers have been misdiagnosed and they've been told they're undergoing different stages of grief, by the end of the day, they get mistreatment as far as the intervention is concerned. Now, this kind of mislabel of grievers even has gone further to make many people who are undergoing grief to be put under a lot of medication, while what they need is grief and loss therapy, but not psychiatric and psychological treatment. Why? Every misdiagnosis will lead to mistreatment or mistreat in one way or the other. Now, because of that, how do I know if I or someone I know is incomplete with a loss? How will I know if I or someone I know is incomplete with a loss? If my information is making more sense to you, kindly let me get more and more feedback from you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebuilding Family Foundation. Kindly, more detail about this topic and the depth about it, you'll find it there already. I've done the training. It's for you to go, sit down, listen, and add value to yourself. Thank you, Manuel Bolo, watching from Mombasa. More people, if you can get me, kindly send your post and let me hear from you and also your experiences from where you are. Now, how will you know that probably you are in grief due to losses, or your friend or someone around you is undergoing the same one? When you have undergone a loss, but you are unwilling to think about that loss or talk about someone who died, or even express feelings about any other kind of a loss, high chances are you are in grief. Unwillingness to think about or talk about someone who died. I remember with my late dad, we were very close. He's one of the men whom I can call my personal mentor. He believed in me so much. Not only did he believe in me, he invested a lot for my life. When I was to go and do my further studies, and he had just earned his lump sum from working with the government, he invested big chunk amount of money. In some of the wrong decisions I made, he still got closer to me, listened to me, advised me, and gave me a way out. When he died, it was a big blow for me. At first, it was not easy for me to talk about it because every time I wanted to think about the fact that I've lost my dad, it was so much affecting me. I could not withstand the reality that he is no more. I had to start dealing with it step by step. Today, I can boldly talk about him, and I'm very proud about him. So when losses take place, it can be loss of resources, loss of money, loss of a partner, loss of a gadget, can be a phone. There's a point whereby you do not even to imagine, nor think you just lost it. You just lost it. Now, when you find yourself in such kind of scenario, sometimes it's because of the effect of grief, which you need to deal with. So if you are unwilling to think about or talk about someone who has died or express feeling about any kind of loss you have undergone, probably you need to understand you're undergoing grief and you need help. Or if you are fond of memories if your fond memories are turning painful about the loss which you underwent, you may be experiencing unresolved grief. You got a loss, you got to grief, but you have not yet come to a point where you are willing to resolve it. So because it's unresolved grief, then memories about the loss bring a painful emotional experience on you. You need grief recovery therapy. Or if you want to talk about only the positive aspect of the relationship which you lost, you might be in what we call incomplete state. Yes, you got a loss, but what you lost, you only prefer to talk about the positive aspect about it and try to ignore about the negative aspect of the same thing. These are common experiences we undergo every time. When these things are happening around you, around someone you love, someone you know, please, you need to encourage him to look for someone who can offer to him or her grief recovery therapy. Or maybe what you want is just talk about the only negative aspect of the relationship you lost. You are engaged, you are courting someone, and the relationship was broken. You are almost getting a job, you just missed it. You are almost getting promoted, you just missed it. Then you get the loss, you get to grief, anger, and resentment, and the only thing you want to talk is the negative aspect of what occurred. These are signs of unresolved grief. But still, something can happen at every given time. Now, unresolved grief may be at the root of fear associated with thoughts or feelings about the relationship. Unresolved grief may be at the root of any fear associated with thoughts or feelings about a relationship. You lost it. There's that fear. How will I start talking about it? Will they really understand me? I don't think anybody will ever understand me. Then because of that, you decide to die with your problem. Life is full of challenges. Life has a lot of losses sometimes. But in the middle of all this, there's always a way out. What are some of the impact of unresolved grief in society? What are some of the impact of unresolved grief in society? Now, the data I'm going to give you right now will make you to see and notice why you have to get this therapy from us, the expert. The following statistics are heartbreaking and could be avoided in many cases if people issue of loss and grief were addressed. It has been found out that 13 million grievers annually, 13 million grievers annually die due to death. We have 13 million grievers annually. Sorry, we have 13 million grievers annually due to death every year. We have 13 million people who are grieving due to death. And there are 2.6 million deaths per year in the United States, with an average of 5 grievers per death, according to the US Census. I'm giving a data because, unfortunately, in Africa, such kind of data, we don't put them for Portland. Let me use the United States of America data. There are 2.6 deaths per year in the United States alone, with an average of 5 grievers per death. For every death, there are 5 people grieving in grief. Not only that, 2.5 million grievers per year, it is due to divorce. That's in the US alone. 2.5 people get into grief due to divorce. This does not include children grieving because of the same significant loss of parents divorcing. 2.5, that's a big number of grievers due to divorce. 15.6 million grievers per year due to romantic breakup. That's other data. 15.6 million people become grievers due to romantic breakup. That's breakup of relationships at different stages, maybe during courtship point, the time when maybe they're almost getting to marriage and such kind of thing. Romantic breakup is leading to 15.6 million grievers per year. A study shows that, another impact, 95,647 persons who lost a spouse found that the overall death rate for the surviving spouse doubled in the first week following the loss. This is big. Out of 95,647 people who lost their spouses, after the loss of their spouse, the number of deaths of those who lost their spouse in the first week doubled. It doubled following the loss. Meaning, someone loses the husband, but after 1 week, this person dies to follow the husband. Or someone loses the wife, after 1 week, he dies. It double effect of death rate due to loss. My brothers and sisters, this is something which we need to be aware about and take care of our life. In the same study, the heart attack rate more than double was on male survivors when their wives died, and more than triple for the women. I repeat, in the same study, heart attack rate was more than double for male survivors. Most of the men whom their wives, they got a loss of death for their wives. The men who survived, a double number of the men who survived got heart attack after the loss of their wives. And more than triple for women who lost their husbands. What does it tell? Marriage bonding is so powerful that when loss take place without something being done, it can lead 3 times triple effect on women and double effect on men as far as heart attack is concerned. Again, it was found out that the surviving spouses, 93% more likely to get into fatal road accident, and suicide rate can go up to 242%. I repeat, most of the surviving couples after loss through death, 93% of the people who survive, they are more likely to find themselves in fatal road accident. Why? They cannot concentrate. So that loss can lead to death through road accidents. And some who remained after the loss of their partner, 242% of them got suicidal. I believe this statistics is not just from the US alone. These things also happening in our country, Kenya. Due to time, let me finish with this part. Unfortunately, unresolved grief is cumulative and cumulatively negative. Unfortunately, unresolved grief, when we get to grief after loss, if it's not resolved, it becomes cumulative and cumulatively negative, meaning that every loss piles cumulatively from a small hill to an anthill and to a mountain. And once it gets to that point, your life gets to a standstill. Why? Because it accumulates and can cumulatively be extremely dangerous. Losses are bound to happen. Grief will always come on our way. But how do you deal with your grief after losses? Now, this is what is very key and very important. If you don't have the right mindset, the right skill set to deal with it, and the right tool set to deal with it, it will finally destroy you. Rebuilding Family Foundation exists to make sure that you have the right information at the right time so that you can be able to tackle this kind of problems in one way or the other. My viewer, if the information coming is good, nice, and exciting, today I was just creating an awareness. If you need more about this information, kindly go to our YouTube channel, Rebuilding Family Foundation. You'll be privileged to get 2 episodes of detail of information about grief and loss. Not only that, soon we are planning to have workshops and seminars on the same matter. And not only are we going to create awareness, also we are going to take people through grief and loss therapy. Of course, at a cost, but it's more detrimental to suffer without getting help. Once more, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebuilding Family Foundation. And every day we post something good, you'll be able to get our information. Not only that, help me by giving people this link of our YouTube channel so that more and more people can be able to learn and relearn on how they become incompetent. God bless you. Let's connect again next week on Friday, the same time, 9 to 10, and learn more about issues to do with life and how we can become men and women of great success. Before I leave, I'd like to appreciate the following people who joined our meeting today. Emmanuel Bolo, watching from Mombasa. Esondege, thank you very much. PMB Bolo, thank you very much, all the way from Kwale. Brian Bolo, thank you very much, watching from your area of comfort. Really appreciate you. I know there's some of great friends, good friends, who love watching in silence. Kindly be posting something as a motivation for many other more people who join our program in one way or the other. Get posted. Good night. God bless you. Let's connect again for Rebuilding Family Foundation every Friday and Moment with Christ every Wednesday. Good night.
Oh yeah. Still alive. Ingelikuwa Mungu anauliza mwanadamu jinsi ya kumtendea mwanadamu, basi mimi nisingekuwa jinsi nilivyo, hata tena nisingekuwa mahali nilipo. sifai, wangekukanya vikali, ungekumbushwa dhambi zangu za kale. Baba yoyo, unabariki unayependa, unabariki unavyopenda. Mimi nahitaji ndio yako Yesu tu, nahitaji ndio yako Yesu tu, ninataka ndio yako Yesu tu, yako Yesu, ndio yako ndio itanisimamisha, ndio yako itanifungulia milango. Hakuna sikio lenye funiko jamani, wala sijaona jicho lenye pazia. Adui zako wangelikuwa na uwezo, wangefumba macho, wangefunika masikio, wasikuone ukiwa juu, wasisikie umebarikiwa. Meza utaandaliwa mbele yao, utakula utakunywa mbele yao. Nasema ndio ya Bwana. Nahitaji ndio yako Yesu tu, nahitaji ndio yako Yesu tu, ndio yako, ninataka ndio yako Yesu tu, yako Yesu, ndio yako ndio itanisimamisha, ndio yako itanifungulia milango. Yesu, usiposema ndio, mali yangu, akili zangu hazitaweza. Bwana sema, sema